On Christmas, my son-in-law gave me a bottle of champagne. The next day, he sent me 7 text messages asking, "Did you like the bottle I gave you?" I replied, "I gave it to my daughter. She said she loved it." He called me desperately screaming, "Why did you do that? Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from." I never thought a Christmas gift could feel so wrong, but there I was, standing in my daughter Peyton's kitchen, holding a bottle of Dom Perignon that made my skin crawl. Not because of the champagne itself. It was beautiful, expensive, the kind of thing I'd never buy for myself. It was Daniel's behavior that set off every alarm bell in my head. "Dad, you have to try it tonight," he kept saying, his voice too eager, too insistent. "I picked it out special for you. It's the good stuff, you know? The real deal." I'm 60 years old. I've been around long enough to know when someone's trying too hard to sell me something, and Daniel was practically pushing this bottle into my hands like his life depended on it. His usually calm demeanor was replaced by this nervous energy that made me uncomfortable. He kept wiping his palms on his jeans, checking his phone, glancing at Peyton with these looks I couldn't quite read. "That's very generous of you, Daniel," I said, turning the heavy bottle in my hands. The gold foil caught the light from Peyton's chandelier, the one I'd helped them pick out 3 years ago when they bought this house, back when I still thought Daniel was a decent man who loved my daughter. "No, really, you should open it now," he pressed, moving closer to me. I could smell his cologne, that expensive stuff he wore that always seemed too strong. "Christmas only comes once a year, right? Might as well celebrate properly." Peyton looked up from where she was arranging leftover turkey in containers. "Daniel, let Dad take it home if he wants to. Maybe he's saving it for a special occasion." "What's more special than Christmas with family?" Daniel's laugh sounded forced, hollow. He was looking at me with an intensity that made my stomach turn. "Come on, Jonathan, live a little. When's the last time you treated yourself to something nice?" That stung, and he knew it would. Since Martha passed 2 years ago, I'd been living quietly, simply. My teacher's pension was enough for my small apartment and basic needs, but luxuries like $100 champagne weren't in my budget. Daniel knew that. He also knew how to make me feel like the poor relation, the burden they had to tolerate at family gatherings. "I appreciate the thought," I said carefully, watching his face, "but I think I'll save it. Maybe for New Year's, or when I have something really worth celebrating." Daniel's smile faltered for just a second, but I caught it. That flash of frustration, quickly covered by another forced grin. Of course, your call, Dad." Dad. He'd been calling me that for 3 years now, ever since he married Peyton. At first, I'd found it endearing, this young man wanting to include me, to make me feel like family. Now it felt calculated, like everything else about Daniel seemed to feel lately. The rest of Christmas evening passed in a blur of polite conversation and uncomfortable silences. I watched Daniel throughout dinner, noting how he kept glancing at the bottle I'd set on their kitchen counter, how he kept steering the conversation back to it, asking if I was sure I didn't want to open it, suggesting we make a toast. Peyton seemed oblivious to his fixation, chatting about her job at the marketing firm, complaining about her boss, planning their New Year's trip to Cabo. My daughter looked happy enough, but there was something different about her lately. She'd grown distant over the past few months, screening my calls, making excuses when I invited her to lunch. When I'd asked if everything was okay, she'd brushed off my concerns with a quick, "Just busy with work, Dad." As I was leaving, Daniel walked me to my car, insisting on carrying the champagne bottle. "Yeah, you sure you don't want to take just a sip before you go?" he asked, holding it out to me one last time. "I mean, it's really meant to be shared." "I'm driving," I reminded him, though that wasn't the real reason. Something in my gut was telling me not to drink whatever was in that bottle. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe it was the grief and loneliness making me suspicious of everyone's motives. But I'd learned to trust my instincts over the years, especially when it came to people who seemed too eager to please. Right. Safety first. Daniel clapped me on the shoulder a little too hard. "Well, enjoy it whenever you decide to open it. I really hope you like it." The drive back to my apartment took 20 minutes, and I spent every one of them thinking about Daniel's behavior. The way his hands had shaken slightly when he handed me the bottle. The way he'd kept checking his phone, like he was waiting for something. The way his eyes had followed that champagne bottle all evening, like it was made of gold. I'd never liked Daniel much, if I'm being honest. He was handsome enough, successful in his sales job, and he made Peyton laugh. But there was something calculating about him, something that reminded me of the used car salesman who'd tried to rip me off when I was younger. He was always working an angle, always trying to charm his way into or out of something. When Peyton first brought him home, I'd tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Martha had liked him well enough, though she'd mentioned once that he seemed a little too smooth for his own good. I wished she was still here to help me figure out what was bothering me so much about tonight. Back in my apartment, I set the champagne bottle on my kitchen table and stared at it. The fancy label, the elegant shape, the weight of it in my hands, everything about it screamed expensive gift from a loving son-in-law. So why did it feel like a trap? I poured myself a glass of water and sat down across from the bottle, studying it like it might reveal its secrets. Maybe I was being ridiculous. Maybe Daniel was just excited to give me something nice. Maybe he was nervous about the expense and wanted to make sure I appreciated it. Maybe the grief was making me paranoid, seeing threats where none existed. But as I sat there in my quiet apartment surrounded by the photos of Martha and Peyton that lined my walls, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong, and that this innocent-looking bottle of champagne was at the center of it. I decided to wait. Whatever was happening, whatever Daniel was up to, I'd find out soon enough. People like him always revealed their true intentions eventually. You just had to be patient enough to let them hang themselves with their own rope. The first text came at 8:47 a.m. the next morning, while I was still in my bathrobe having coffee and reading the newspaper. My phone buzzed, and I glanced down to see Daniel's name on the screen. "Hey, Jonathan, hope you had a good rest after yesterday. Did you get a chance to try that champagne yet?" I frowned at the message. It wasn't even 9 in the morning, and he was already asking about the champagne. I set my phone aside and went back to reading about the local school board elections. But it buzzed again 5 minutes later. "Just wondering if you liked it. I spent a lot of time picking it out for you." Then again at 9:15, "Hope you're enjoying your Christmas gift." And again at 9:32, "Let me know what you think when you try it." By 10 a.m., I'd received 7 messages from Daniel, all variations on the same theme, all asking about the champagne, all with that same forced enthusiasm that had made me uncomfortable the night before. I'd been married to Martha for 35 years, raised a daughter, taught high school history for 4 decades. I knew desperation when I saw it, even in text form. Something was definitely wrong. I decided to test a theory. Instead of responding to Daniel, I called Peyton. "Hi, Dad," she answered on the 3rd ring, sounding distracted. "What's up?" "I was thinking about that champagne Daniel gave me," I said, watching my reflection in the kitchen window. "It's such a nice bottle, almost too nice to drink by myself. Would you and Daniel like to come over tonight and share it with me?" There was a pause. I don't think we can tonight. Daniel has this work thing and I'm really behind on some projects. What about this weekend then?" "We're pretty booked up, Dad. Why don't you just enjoy it? That's why Daniel got it for you." Another pause, longer this time. "Actually, you know what? Why don't I just take it off your hands? I mean, if you're not going to drink it anyway, Daniel spent so much on it, and I'd hate for it to just sit there." My heart sank. My own daughter trying to get the bottle back. Either she was in on whatever Daniel was planning, or she was just as much a victim as I was supposed to be. "Actually, honey," I said, making my voice sound casual, "I already gave it to you." "What?" Her voice shot up an octave. "What do you mean?" "I dropped it off at your house this morning while you two were at the gym. I left it on your kitchen counter with a note. I figured since you seemed interested, and it's such a nice bottle, you should have it. I thought you'd enjoy it more than I would." I was lying, of course. The bottle was still sitting on my kitchen table, but I wanted to see what would happen. "Dad, you gave it to us? Are you sure?" "Of course I'm sure. I left it right there by your coffee maker. Didn't you see it when you got home?" We haven't been home yet. We're still out running errands." "Well, surprise then. Consider it my gift to you two. I know how much you like nice wine." After I hung up, I sat back and waited. If my suspicions were right, I wouldn't have to wait long. The phone rang 18 minutes later. Daniel's name flashed on the screen, and when I answered, I could hear the panic in his voice immediately. "Jonathan, Peyton said you gave us the champagne? That's right, I said calmly. Thought you two would appreciate it more than me. Nice bottle like that shouldn't go to waste. But where exactly did you put it? Kitchen counter, right where you left it last night, right next to your coffee maker. I could hear him breathing heavily, could practically feel his agitation through the phone. Jonathan, this is important. Did you drink any of it first, even just a sip? No, gave you the whole bottle. Why? And Peyton, has Peyton had any yet? I don't know, Daniel. You'd have to ask her. Is there something wrong? You sound upset. No, everything's fine. I really wanted you to have it, you know. It was specifically for you. That's sweet of you. But Peyton's my daughter. What's mine is hers, right? The silence stretched so long I thought he might have hung up. Finally, his voice came back tight and strained. Jonathan, I need you to listen to me carefully. That bottle, there might be something wrong with it. My blood ran cold. Wrong how? I'm not sure. Maybe it was contaminated somehow, or... Look, I need you to call Peyton right now and tell her not to drink it. Can you do that for me? Why don't you call her yourself? She's your wife. I tried. She's not answering her phone. Please, Jonathan, this is really important. I let him sweat for a few more seconds before saying, all right, I'll try calling her. But Daniel, what aren't you telling me? What's really wrong with that champagne? Just, please call her. I'll explain everything later. He hung up without saying goodbye, leaving me staring at my phone and feeling sick to my stomach. Whatever had been in that bottle, Daniel clearly never intended for Peyton to drink it, which meant it had been meant specifically for me. I thought about Martha, about how she'd always said I was too trusting, too willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. You're a good man, Jonathan, she used to tell me. But sometimes good men finish last because they can't see the wolves in sheep's clothing. I was seeing one now, and he'd married my daughter. My hands were shaking as I dialed Peyton's number. I had to warn her, had to protect her from whatever Daniel had planned. But first, I needed to know how deep this went. Was my daughter innocent, or was she part of whatever sick game Daniel was playing? The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. When Peyton finally answered, her voice was shaky, tearful. Dad, Daniel said you tried to poison us. Dad, Daniel said you tried to poison us. The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the phone tighter, my heart hammering against my ribs. Peyton, honey, what are you talking about? The champagne, she said, her voice thick with tears. Daniel says there was something wrong with it, that you knew it was bad when you gave it to us. He's saying you were trying to hurt us. I closed my eyes, feeling the world tilt beneath me. Of course, Daniel was spinning this, making me the villain in whatever twisted story he was concocting. Peyton, listen to me very carefully. I never gave you that champagne. It's still sitting on my kitchen table right now. Silence. Then, quietly. What? I lied when I told you I dropped it off. I was testing something, trying to figure out why Daniel was so desperate for me to drink it. The bottle never left my apartment. But Daniel said, he was so scared, Dad. He came running into the house looking for the bottle, checking all over the kitchen. When he couldn't find it, he started crying. Actually crying. I've never seen him like that. Where is he now? He's in the bathroom. He's been throwing up for the last hour. Dad, I'm scared. What's going on? I rubbed my forehead, trying to think clearly through the fog of shock and betrayal. Honey, I need you to listen to me without interrupting, okay? Daniel gave me that champagne yesterday, but something about his behavior bothered me. He was too insistent that I drink it right away, too nervous, too pushy. So I decided to wait. Wait for what? To see what he'd do. And now I know. Peyton, I think Daniel put something in that champagne, something that was meant for me. That's insane, Dad. Daniel wouldn't hurt anyone. He loves you. The laugh that escaped me was bitter, hollow. Does he? When's the last time he showed any genuine interest in my life? When's the last time he asked about my health, my retirement, anything that didn't somehow benefit him? Peyton was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, uncertain. He's been asking a lot of questions about your will lately, about what you're planning to leave me when you're gone. My stomach dropped. What kind of questions? Just how much the house was worth when you and Mom bought it? Whether you have life insurance, stuff like that. I thought he was just trying to help me plan for the future, you know, being practical. Peyton, has Daniel been having money problems? Another pause. How did you know? Tell me. I heard her sigh, a shaky sound that broke my heart. He lost his job 3 months ago, got fired for falsifying expense reports. He made me promise not to tell you because he was ashamed. He's been pretending to go to work every day, but really, he's been at the unemployment office or job interviews. The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture so ugly I wanted to deny it, but I couldn't. Not anymore. Dad, are you still there? I'm here, honey. How bad are his debts? Bad. Really bad. We might lose the house. I've been working extra hours, picking up freelance projects, but it's not enough. And then Daniel started talking about your inheritance, about how that could solve everything. Her voice trailed off, and I could hear the realization dawning on her, just as clearly as it had dawned on me. Oh my God, she whispered. Oh my God. Dad, you don't think... I think your husband tried to kill me, Peyton, and I think you need to get out of that house right now. No, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. No, Daniel wouldn't. He couldn't. Where is he now? Still in the bathroom. He's been in there for over an hour, and I can hear him. I think he's having a panic attack or something. Good. That means he thinks you drank whatever he put in that champagne. He thinks he poisoned his own wife instead of her father. The sound Peyton made was somewhere between a sob and a gasp. Dad, I'm scared. I know, honey. I know. But you need to stay calm and you need to get out of there. Do you have your car keys? Yes. Good. I want you to hang up this phone, grab your purse and your keys, and drive straight to my apartment. Don't tell Daniel where you're going. Don't tell him anything. Just leave. But what if he sees me? Then you run. Do you understand me? You run and you call 911. I could hear her crying now, soft, scared sobs that tore at my heart. My little girl, my Peyton, trapped in a house with a man who'd tried to murder her father and accidentally threatened her instead. Dad, what if you're wrong? What if there's some other explanation? Then we'll figure it out together. But right now, the only thing that matters is getting you somewhere safe. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll come over. Drive carefully. And Peyton, if Daniel tries to stop you, if he comes out of that bathroom, you tell him you're going to the store or something. Don't let him know you're coming here. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at that bottle of champagne, this beautiful, expensive thing that had been meant to kill me. My hands were shaking as I reached for it, turning it over to examine the bottom. The seal looked intact, but that didn't mean anything. Daniel was smart enough to know how to tamper with it without leaving obvious signs. I thought about calling the police, but what would I tell them? That my son-in-law had given me a Christmas present and then acted nervous about it? That he'd asked too many questions about my will? They'd think I was a paranoid old man, especially without any proof, but I would have proof soon enough. When Peyton got here, when I could see her face and hear her voice without Daniel listening in, I'd know for certain how deep this went. I'd know whether my daughter was a victim or an accomplice. The thought that she might have known, might have been part of Daniel's plan, made me physically ill, but I had to consider the possibility. The questions about my will, the distance she'd been keeping lately, the way she'd tried to get the champagne back. No. I shook my head, refusing to believe it. Not Peyton, not my daughter. She was scared and confused, married to a man who'd manipulated her into believing his lies. But she wasn't evil. She wasn't capable of plotting her own father's death. Was she? I looked at the photos of her that lined my mantel. Peyton at 5, gap-toothed and laughing. Peyton at 16, rolling her eyes at my attempts to embarrass her in front of her friends. Peyton on her wedding day, beautiful and radiant, dancing with Daniel while Martha and I watched from our table. How had I missed it? How had I failed to see what kind of man she'd married? The sound of a car in the parking lot made me jump. I went to the window and saw Peyton's Honda pulling into a space near the building. She sat in the car for a moment, head in her hands, shoulders shaking. Then she got out, looked around nervously, and hurried toward my building. When I opened the door, she fell into my arms like she used to when she was little and had scraped her knee or had a nightmare. She was sobbing now, great gasping sobs that shook her whole body. "Daddy," she cried, using the name she hadn't called me in years. "Daddy, I think you're right. I think Daniel was trying to hurt you." And as I held my daughter, feeling her tears soak through my shirt, I realized that this was only the beginning. Daniel had shown his true colors, but cornered animals were the most dangerous kind. And we'd just cornered a man who'd already proven he was willing to kill. I held Peyton for what felt like hours, letting her cry against my shoulder while my own tears fell silently into her hair. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and swollen, her eyes red-rimmed with shock and grief. "Tell me everything," I said gently, leading her to my couch. "From the beginning." She wiped her nose with the tissue I handed her, her hand still trembling. "It started about 6 months ago. Daniel became different, more secretive, more controlling. He didn't want me talking to you as much, said you were getting too dependent on me since Mom died." My chest tightened. I'd noticed Peyton pulling away, but I'd attributed it to her being busy with work, with her marriage. I'd never imagined Daniel was orchestrating it. "He kept saying you were being a burden," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "That calling me all the time, wanting to have lunch, wanting to be included in our plans. He said it wasn't healthy, that I needed to set boundaries." "So you did?" She nodded miserably. "I thought he was right. I thought maybe I was enabling you to not move on after Mom died. Daniel made it sound like I was being kind by pulling back, like I was helping you become more independent." The manipulation was breathtaking in its cruelty. Daniel had isolated me from my own daughter by convincing her it was for my own good. And I'd played right into his hands, becoming lonelier, more dependent on their occasional visits, more grateful for any scrap of attention they threw my way. When did the questions about my will start? About 3 months ago, right after he lost his job. At first, it seemed innocent. He'd ask things like whether you'd updated your will after Mom died, whether you had enough saved for end-of-life care, stuff like that. He said he was worried about you being able to afford everything on your pension, but it got more specific. "Yeah." She twisted the tissue in her hands, shredding it. "He wanted to know exact numbers, how much the house sold for after you moved to the apartment, whether you had life insurance, how much was in your retirement accounts." I thought he was trying to help me plan, like making sure I'd be able to take care of you if you got sick or something. "Did you tell him?" Her silence was answer enough. "Peyton, honey, I need you to look at me." I waited until her eyes met mine. "How much did you tell him about my finances?" "Everything," she whispered. He made it seem like it was the responsible thing to do, like we needed to know so we could help you make good decisions. And when money got tight for us, he started talking about how that inheritance could solve all our problems. My heart was breaking, not just for the betrayal, but for how thoroughly Daniel had manipulated my daughter. He'd used her love for me, twisted it into something ugly and calculating. "Dad, I swear I never thought he would actually—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "I know." And I did know. Looking at her now, seeing her genuine horror and grief, I knew my daughter wasn't a killer. She'd been used, manipulated, groomed by a man who saw her as nothing more than a means to an end. "There's more," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" "The champagne wasn't the first time." My blood went cold. "What?" 3 weeks ago, Daniel bought you that bottle of whiskey, remember? He said he found it at an estate sale, thought you'd like it, because it was the same brand Grandpa used to drink. I remembered, a bottle of Jameson that Daniel had brought over during one of their rare visits. I'd thanked him, put it in my liquor cabinet, and promptly forgotten about it. I rarely drank anymore, especially not hard liquor. After tonight, after seeing how panicked he got about the champagne, I started thinking about other things. The way he'd ask if I'd heard from you after he brought gifts. The way he'd seem disappointed when you'd mention feeling fine, looking good. I thought he was just making conversation, but now you think he was checking to see if I was getting sick. She nodded, tears streaming down her face again. "Dad, I think he's been trying to poison you for weeks, slowly, and I think I've been helping him without realizing it." The room felt like it was spinning. I gripped the arm of my chair, trying to process what she was telling me. Not just one attempt on my life, but multiple. A sustained campaign of murder, disguised as thoughtful gifts from a caring son-in-law. "The vitamins," Peyton said suddenly, her eyes widening with horror. "Oh, God, Dad, the vitamins." "What vitamins?" "Last month, Daniel got you that bottle of multivitamins. Said he read an article about how important vitamin D was for seniors, especially during winter. He was so insistent that you take them every day." I felt sick. The bottle was in my medicine cabinet, half empty. I'd been taking them faithfully for 3 weeks, trusting that my son-in-law cared about my health. "I need to call the police," I said, starting to stand up. "Wait!" Peyton grabbed my arm. "Dad, there's something else you need to know." The look on her face told me I wasn't going to like whatever she was about to say. Daniel wasn't working alone. My legs gave out, and I sank back into my chair. "What do you mean?" "His sister, Michelle, she's a nurse at Mercy General. She's been helping him figure out dosages, methods. I overheard them talking on the phone last week. I thought they were discussing his grandmother's medication, but now you think they were discussing mine." Michelle knows about pharmacology, about what combinations of things could cause a heart attack or stroke, natural-looking deaths that wouldn't raise suspicion in a man your age. I stared at my daughter, this woman who looked so much like her mother but was telling me things Martha could never have imagined. A conspiracy to murder me, involving not just my son-in-law but his entire family. People who smiled at me at gatherings, who called me dad, who had been planning my death while I worried about being a burden to them. "How long have you known?" I asked. I didn't know, not really. I suspected something was wrong, but I kept making excuses, rationalizing it away. Daniel was stressed about money, about finding work. He wasn't sleeping well. I told myself he was just worried about our future, about being able to take care of me. "But you knew something wasn't right." She nodded shamefully. "The way he talked about you changed. Instead of just complaining about you being clingy or needy, he started saying things like, 'It would be better for everyone if you weren't around to worry about.' He'd make jokes about how much cheaper everything would be without having to factor in your care as you got older. And you didn't think that was strange?" "I thought he was just venting," she cried. "Married people complain about their in-laws all the time." I never imagined he meant it literally. The worst part was, I understood how it had happened. Daniel was smooth, manipulative. He'd taken perfectly normal marital complaints and slowly, gradually escalated them until murder seemed like a reasonable solution to their financial problems. He'd groomed Peyton just as carefully as he'd groomed me, making us both complicit in our own destruction. "Peyton," I said carefully, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Did you ever, at any point, agree with him? Did you ever think it might be better if I wasn't around?" The question hung between us like a loaded gun. For a moment I thought she might not answer. When she did, her voice was so quiet I had to strain to hear her. "Once," she whispered, "when we were about to lose the house, when Daniel was crying about the debt and the shame of it all, he said it wasn't fair that you had all this money just sitting in the bank while we were struggling. He said you'd lived your life, had your chance at happiness with Mom, and now it was our turn." My heart shattered completely. "I told him he was being horrible," she added quickly. "I said you were my father and I loved you. But Dad, for just a moment, just one terrible moment, I understood what he meant, and I hate myself for it." Looking at my daughter, seeing the self-loathing and horror in her eyes, I realized that Daniel had nearly succeeded in destroying more than just me. He'd nearly destroyed her too, turning her into someone she didn't recognize, someone capable of wishing for her own father's death. But nearly wasn't the same as completely. And there was still time to stop him. "We're going to pretend nothing happened." Peyton looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Dad, what are you talking about? We have to call the police. We have to—" "No." I held up my hand, my voice calmer than I felt. "Think about it, honey. What proof do we have? A bottle of champagne that might be tampered with? Some vitamins that could be perfectly normal? Daniel's nervous behavior? His sister being a nurse? But he tried to kill you. We believe he tried to kill me. But belief isn't evidence, and Daniel is smart enough to have covered his tracks. If we call the police now, he'll just deny everything, claim we're paranoid, maybe even suggest I'm having cognitive issues due to grief." Peyton's face crumpled. "So we just let him get away with it?" "No," I said, feeling something cold and determined settle in my chest. "We make him think he succeeded." Over the next hour, I laid out my plan. It was simple, really. Elegant in its simplicity. Daniel thought he was dealing with a grieving widower and a naive wife he could manipulate. He had no idea he was about to face a retired history teacher who'd spent 40 years studying human nature, watching patterns, understanding how people's worst impulses could be used against them. "You're going to go home," I told Peyton. You're going to tell Daniel that you found me collapsed in my apartment, that you called 911, but it was too late, that I died of what appeared to be a heart attack. He'll want to see the body. You'll tell him the paramedics already took me to the hospital, that they're doing an autopsy because it was an unexpected death. You'll be devastated, inconsolable. You'll need his comfort and support. Dad, I don't know if I can act that well. You won't be acting. The devastation will be real because you'll be mourning what we used to be as a family. You'll be grieving the trust we've lost, the innocence that's gone forever. The only thing you'll be lying about is whether I'm actually dead. We spent another hour working out the details. Peyton would tell Daniel that I'd left everything to her in my will, which was true, though the will also specified that if anything suspicious happened to me, everything would go to charity instead, a provision I'd added after Martha died, never imagining I'd need it to protect myself from my own family. What about the funeral? Peyton asked. Tell him I wanted to be cremated immediately, no service, that I was too grief-stricken about your mother to want any kind of ceremony. Daniel will love that. No body to examine, no questions from other family members or friends. What if he doesn't believe it? He'll believe it because he'll want to believe it, because it means his plan worked, his problems are solved. People see what they want to see, Peyton, and Daniel wants to see me dead. The hardest part was watching my daughter prepare to go back to the man who'd tried to murder me. But this was the only way. If we were going to expose Daniel, if we were going to get justice, we needed him to feel safe enough to reveal his true nature completely. I'll check in with you every day, I told her, as she prepared to leave. If you're in any danger, if you feel threatened at all, you call me immediately. Can you do this? She nodded, though her face was pale. What about the champagne, the vitamins? Should I take them with me as evidence? Leave the champagne here. Take one of the vitamins with you. Slip it in your purse when Daniel's not looking. We'll need to have them analyzed eventually. But be careful. If Daniel realizes you suspect him, if he thinks you're gathering evidence, he'll try to kill me too. Probably. The casual way I said it, the matter-of-fact acceptance of how dangerous this man was, seemed to hit Peyton like a slap. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her really understanding, perhaps for the first time, what kind of person she'd married. How did I not see it? She whispered. How did I live with him for 3 years and not know what he was capable of? Because you loved him, because you trusted him, because when we love someone, we make excuses for their behavior, we rationalize their cruelty, we convince ourselves that they're not really as bad as they seem. I was thinking of myself as much as her. How many warning signs had I ignored? How many times had Daniel's mask slipped, only for me to convince myself I was being paranoid or oversensitive? After Peyton left, I sat in my apartment staring at the champagne bottle, feeling the weight of what we were about to do. It was dangerous. If Daniel discovered the truth, both Peyton and I could end up dead. But it was also necessary, because men like Daniel didn't stop. If he'd tried to kill me once, he'd try again, and next time, he might succeed. I spent the evening making preparations. I called my bank, my lawyer, my few remaining close friends. I told them I was going away for a while, visiting an old colleague who'd moved to Florida. I asked them not to contact me unless it was an emergency. I needed time to grieve Martha properly, time to figure out what came next in my life. Then I waited. The call came at 11:47 p.m. Peyton sobbing hysterically, barely coherent. "Daddy's gone," she wailed into the phone, loud enough for Daniel to hear in the background. "He's really gone. I found him on the kitchen floor. There was nothing I could do." Even knowing it was an act, hearing my daughter say those words made my chest tight with emotion. In a way, Jonathan Holloway was dead. The trusting father, the man who'd believed in the goodness of family, who'd welcomed Daniel into our lives with open arms, that man was gone forever. The paramedic said it looked like a heart attack, Peyton continued, and I could hear Daniel in the background, making soothing noises, offering comfort. They took him to Mercy General for the autopsy. Oh God, Daniel, what am I going to do without him? What she was going to do, if everything went according to plan, was discover exactly what her husband was capable of when he thought he'd gotten away with murder. I stayed awake all night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Martha. What would she say if she could see me now, plotting against our son-in-law, using our daughter as bait in a trap for a killer. Would she approve, or would she tell me to just call the police and be done with it? But Martha had never met Daniel. She'd died before Peyton brought him home, before he'd had a chance to charm her the way he'd charmed everyone else. If she'd been alive, if she'd seen what I'd seen, felt what I'd felt, I think she would have understood. The next morning, I drove to a cheap motel on the outskirts of town and paid cash for a room. I'd be staying there until this was over, until Daniel revealed enough of himself that we had real evidence, real proof of what he'd done and what he'd planned to do. My phone buzzed with a text from Peyton. The funeral home is picking up the body today. Daniel keeps asking about the will. He's trying to comfort me, but I can see it in his eyes. He's excited. I typed back, "Stay strong. This will be over soon." But as I sat in that dingy motel room, surrounded by the smell of stale cigarettes and industrial carpet cleaner, I wondered if that was true. Because the Daniel I was beginning to understand wasn't just a man who'd tried to kill for money. He was something much worse, much more dangerous. He was a man who enjoyed it. And now that he thought he'd succeeded once, now that he believed he'd gotten away with the perfect murder, I had the sinking feeling that Peyton and I had unleashed something we might not be able to control. My phone rang. Peyton's number. "Dad?" Her voice was shaky, frightened. "You need to know something. Daniel just got off the phone with Michelle. They're planning something for tonight, something about celebrating properly." "What kind of celebrating?" "I don't know, but Dad..." They were laughing. They were laughing about you being dead. I closed my eyes, feeling the last of my doubt fade away. Whatever happened next, whatever risks we had to take, it would be worth it to expose these people for what they really were. "Hold on, honey," I told my daughter. "Just hold on a little longer." The recording device was smaller than I'd expected, no bigger than a matchbox. The private investigator I'd hired had shown me how to use it, how to hide it, how to make sure it captured everything clearly. Now, sitting in my rental car outside Peyton's house at 9 p.m., I checked it one more time before slipping it into my jacket pocket. "You sure about this, Mr. Holloway?" Detective Martinez had asked when I'd finally called the police that morning. "If we go in there and they haven't said anything incriminating, if your son-in-law is just guilty of being a jerk and not attempted murder, then I'll apologize and live with the embarrassment," I told her. "But if I'm right, if he really did try to kill me, then my daughter is in danger every second she stays in that house." The past 3 days had been the longest of my life. Peyton had been sending me updates through a secure messaging app the private investigator had helped us set up. Daniel was growing bolder, more confident. He'd already started talking about life insurance payouts, about how they could pay off their debts and start fresh. He'd made an appointment with a financial planner to discuss investment strategies for Peyton's inheritance. But more disturbing were the personal details Peyton shared. How Daniel had started being crueler to her now that he thought I was gone, more controlling. How he'd laughed when she cried about missing me, telling her she was being dramatic about an old man who'd lived his life. How he'd started talking about other problems they could solve now that they'd proven how easy it was. "He mentioned your neighbor, Mrs. Chen," Peyton had texted yesterday. "Said she was always complaining about our music being too loud. Said maybe she needed to learn some manners, or maybe she'd have an accident like you did." That's when I knew we couldn't wait any longer. The front door of the house was unlocked. Peyton had left it that way on purpose. I slipped inside, hearing voices from the kitchen, Daniel and Michelle, his sister, talking in low, excited tones. I crept closer, the recording device in my palm. "Can't believe how perfectly it worked," Michelle was saying. "I was sure the old bastard would taste something off about those vitamins, but he took them like a good little patient." "The champagne would have been quicker," Daniel replied, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. But this way was better, more natural. Heart attack brought on by the stress of losing his wife, combined with the strain of those lovely little toxins I've been feeding him for weeks. What about Peyton? Does she suspect anything? Are you kidding? She's a wreck. Keeps crying about how guilty she feels for not being a better daughter, how she wished she'd spent more time with him before he died. It's pathetic, really. But useful, Michelle said with a laugh. A grieving widow is much more manageable than a suspicious one. Exactly. And now that the old man's gone, I can really start molding her into what I need. No more of this independence nonsense. No more career ambitions. She's going to be a proper wife, grateful for everything I've given her. I felt sick listening to them, but I forced myself to keep the device steady, to capture every word. "So what's next?" Michelle asked. "Well, first we wait for the life insurance to pay out. Then we start making some changes. Peyton doesn't need that big house anymore. Too many memories of Daddy. We'll sell it, move somewhere smaller, somewhere I have more control over who she talks to, what she does. And if she objects, she won't. Because if she does, she might have the same kind of accident her father did. Stress-induced heart attack brought on by grief. These things run in families, you know." The casual way he talked about murdering my daughter, his own wife, made my vision blur with rage. But I stayed still, stayed quiet, let the device capture everything. "You know what the best part is?" Daniel continued. "Everyone thinks I'm the grieving son-in-law, the supportive husband helping his wife through this difficult time. Even Peyton thinks I'm being wonderful, taking care of all the funeral arrangements, handling all the paperwork. She has no idea I've been planning this for months." "How much do you think you'll end up with?" "Couple $100,000 from the life insurance, plus whatever we get from selling his house before he moved to that apartment. Peyton said he got almost $400,000 for it. Then there's his retirement accounts, his savings. I'd say we're looking at close to $1 million total. Not bad for a few months of work. The beauty of it is, it's completely legal. I'm not stealing anything. I'm just inheriting it through my wife. And once she's gone too, well, I'll be the grieving widower who just can't bear to stay in this town with all its sad memories." They were laughing now, actually laughing about their plans to murder me and my daughter. I'd heard enough. More than enough. I crept back toward the front door, but before I could reach it, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Peyton appeared, her face pale but determined. "Dad?" she whispered. I nodded, tapping the recording device. "Got it all." "Good, because I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend to love him for another second." "Twice." We could hear Daniel and Michelle still talking in the kitchen, their voices growing louder as they opened what sounded like a bottle of wine to celebrate. I pulled out my phone and sent the text message I'd already composed. Now. 3 minutes later, Detective Martinez and 2 uniformed officers walked through the front door. "Daniel Morrison?" Detective Martinez called out. The talking in the kitchen stopped abruptly. I heard chairs scraping, footsteps, whispered curses. Daniel appeared in the doorway, Michelle behind him. When he saw me standing in his living room, very much alive, his face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and then pure, undiluted rage. "You," he snarled, "you son of a bitch." "Mr. Morrison, I'm Detective Martinez. I need you and your sister to come with me for questioning in connection with the attempted murder of Jonathan Holloway." "Attempted murder?" Daniel's voice cracked. "He's standing right there. Obviously, nobody murdered him." "No," I said calmly, but it wasn't for lack of trying. I handed Detective Martinez the recording device. "Everything you need is on there. Confessions to poisoning me, plans to murder my daughter, details about how they did it." Michelle tried to run. She made it 3 steps before the uniformed officer caught her arm and cuffed her. Daniel just stood there, staring at me with such hatred that I actually took a step back. "This is entrapment," he spat. "You can't use any of this in court." "Actually, we can," Detective Martinez said, reading him his rights. "See, when someone tries to kill you, you're allowed to defend yourself, even if that means letting them think they succeeded." As they led Daniel away in handcuffs, he turned back to look at Peyton. "You knew," he said. "You fucking knew he was alive." "I knew you were a murderer," she replied, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in months. "I knew you tried to kill my father, and I knew you were planning to kill me too." "You'll regret this," Daniel screamed as they pushed him toward the police car. "Both of you. You'll regret this." After the police left, Peyton and I sat on her couch in the sudden quiet of the house. She was crying, but they were tears of relief now, not grief. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you file for divorce. Now you get counseling to help you process what happened. Now you rebuild your life. What about you?" I looked around the house that had been my daughter's home for 3 years, the place where she'd been manipulated and threatened and turned against her own father. "I think I'm going to take that trip to Florida after all. maybe find somewhere warm to live, somewhere I can start over too. But Dad, the money? Daniel was right about one thing. You do have a good life insurance policy and retirement savings and everything else. I don't want you to think I expect— Peyton, I said gently, I don't care about the money. I never did. All I ever wanted was to have my daughter back. She leaned against my shoulder the way she used to when she was little. You do, she whispered. You have me back. 6 months later, I was sitting on the beach in St. Petersburg, reading the newspaper and sipping coffee while the sun came up over the Gulf of Mexico. The article was small, buried on page 4 of the local section, but I'd been waiting for it. Daniel Morrison, sentenced to 15 years for attempted murder. The trial had been swift once the recording was played for the jury. Michelle had agreed to testify against her brother in exchange for a reduced sentence. Peyton had been brave and strong on the witness stand, telling the world about the manipulation, the isolation, the gradual erosion of her relationship with her father. My phone buzzed with a text from her. She'd moved to Denver after the trial, started a new job, begun dating a kind man who worked at the library and had no interest in her finances. Saw the news this morning? It's really over, isn't it? It's over, I typed back. How are you doing? Good, really good. Miss you, though. Miss you, too. Come visit whenever you want. I've got a guest room with a view of the ocean. I set my phone aside and looked out at the water, thinking about Martha, about how proud she would be of Peyton for finding her way back to herself, how proud she'd be of me for fighting for our daughter instead of just accepting defeat. The old Jonathan Holloway, the one who'd trusted too easily and seen the best in everyone, was gone. But maybe that wasn't entirely a bad thing. The new Jonathan was wiser, more cautious. He'd learned that family wasn't just about blood, that love could be twisted into something ugly, that sometimes the people closest to you were the ones you needed to fear most. But he'd also learned that real love, the kind Martha and I had shared, the kind Peyton and I were rebuilding, could survive anything, even attempted murder, even betrayal, even the discovery that the person you'd welcomed into your family had been planning to destroy it from the inside. I finished my coffee, folded the newspaper, and walked down to the water's edge. The waves washed over my feet, warm and constant, and for the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. Daniel Morrison was in prison where he belonged. Peyton was safe and free and healing. And I was alive to see the sunrise, something that might never have happened if my instincts hadn't warned me away from that bottle of champagne. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply refusing to die when someone wants you dead and living well enough to watch them face the consequences of their choices. The sun climbed higher, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, and I smiled. It was going to be a beautiful day.